Welcome back to another episode of World Ablaze. This is episode 106. That's right, 106. This year kicked off with a bang, and everybody's talking about Venezuela, Maduro, and so many have missed the mark on the reasons for the actions that have been taken. Now, this episode is normally I try to do, 2 to 3 topics. But I'm going to make this episode I'm going to keep this episode rather strictly about Venezuela. And I don't know how long this is going to go. My goal is to keep this an hour or less, hopefully about 45 minutes, because I'm sure you all heard everybody already. There's 1,000 other podcasters, news outlets, all chiming in, giving their opinions, even though 95% of them all, let's say 95, not being generous, 95% of them all are wrong and have been wrong. So I'm going to attempt to give you a valid explanation based on facts, historical facts, to hopefully help you better understand the situation. Now, a lot of what has happened, we don't all have to agree with. Nobody agrees with regime change. Another country stepping into another sovereign nation to purposely force regime change historically has never been great. It just hasn't. But what happened here with the capture of Maduro was really less to do with regime change and more to do with protecting our own backyard, period. And for anybody who says that it's something else, you might want to listen to another news outlet, podcast, or whoever. But the reality is, all the mainstream media outlets right now, all of the podcast bros, even some of the intel guys who are way behind on their assessments in terms of being over the target on this situation, are now all saying, chiming, lockstep, well, maybe this really wasn't about the oil. Maybe it wasn't all about the oil. I mean, it had a little bit to do with it, but maybe it wasn't really the main issue. Well, maybe it was the drugs. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But, it was partially the drugs. But before, everyone said that this was nothing more than a grab for resources. Nothing more than Trump trying to step in and steal the oil out from under the Venezuelan government. There's some merit to that. I'm not going to deny it. There's some merit to that. But again, not the whole story. And so I want to point this out to everybody. While now you have your Megyn Kelly's, your Fox News's, like everybody's suddenly like they all don't agree with each other, but they're all saying, well, it's kind of about the oil, but not really. Wait. What is that? What is that word? What is that nation that everyone's talking about now all of a sudden? Oh, was this about China? Was it? Was it about China? I remember talking about it being China about, I don't know, over 2 months ago. I remember talking about it being about Iran over 2 months. I remember discussing Russia's involvement over 2 months ago. I mean, honestly, I've been bringing these points up further than about 3 months ago now, actually. But nobody paid attention. Nobody paid attention. Why? Well, look, I know my place. I know I'm not as big as a Megyn Kelly or a Tucker Carlson or whoever you like to listen to on the side. But if anything has been proven, is this. If you're not consistently listening to my show and you're not paying attention to what I'm saying because you just got it on in the background, you're doing yourself a disservice and you are behind the 8 ball in information. Do I get everything right? Hell no. But I'm telling you right now, my geopolitical record thus far has been pretty damn accurate. And listen, I have friends who know a lot more than I do. And I have these discussions with these friends just so I could bounce things back and forth, check my assessments, test my theories. But in the end, I've been mostly right on things. I really have. And I'm not trying to pat my own back here, toot my own horn, but it's kind of vindicating that a small podcaster like me has been getting it right, been told that I don't know what I'm talking about, but all of a sudden, everyone is parroting the same shit that I've been saying for nearly 3 damn months. And so look, I got a lot to go over, and I do not like repeating myself. I'm just gonna tell you right now. Like, this could be a much longer podcast to go through everything that is happening in that region in the Caribbean. It's not just about Venezuela, by the way. It's about Peru. It's about Panama. It's about Colombia. It's about Brazil. There is so much going on. Even Cuba. There's so much going on there that is not just about Venezuela. And no, it's not all about drugs. And no, it's not all about oil, but oil is a major tool that has been used by all parties involved in the region. So I'm just going to refer you to these two episodes here. So listen, I have episode 102 right here, titled "Terrorist Attack: Preserving America, No to Tolerance, and U.S. versus Venezuela." In that particular episode, I do a bit of a deep dive into the history of Maduro, the drug trade and trafficking in Venezuela that goes all the way back to 1993, by the way. Um, and under Hugo Chavez, just exploded. The military themselves were involved in the narco trafficking dealings. And by the time Maduro took power, the government of Venezuela was literally like selling protection to narco trafficking routes, especially after the US clamped down on the Colombian drug trade. They needed to find new routes to move their product. And so all roads from Mexico, from Peru, from Colombia led to Venezuela. And once it was in Venezuela, Venezuela protected the trafficking routes for these narcos. Some of it went up through South America past the Venezuelan border. Most of it left the ports of Venezuela. And it's very important for everybody to realize this. Venezuela, just in cocaine. Now, we're not going to talk about all drugs because there's a lot of low IQ mouth breathers like, well, Venezuela doesn't produce fentanyl. So, Trump is an idiot. And look, first off, stop making this about Trump because, shocker, this goes back to Obama. In fact, it goes back further than Obama. Hell, it goes all the way back to President Monroe. That's right. I think it was back, 1800, something like that. So this area has been an area of interest and contention for many years. Now, the drug trade in and of itself has been there for many years. And under the Obama administration is when everything was really, really tested and tensions rose because before 2005, by the way, before 2005, the DEA was able to work with the Venezuelan government to go after narco terrorists, to go after drug traffickers. But in 2005, the Venezuelan government decided, you know what? We're kicking the DEA out. We're no longer working with you. And why? Because Mr. Hugo Chavez decided the drug trade was good business. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the connections. And so there's a deep history of drug trafficking that was partly to do about money. I think it was about an $8 billion a year business for Venezuela, which, by American standards, if we're just talking about money, by the way, isn't a lot of money. But for a country the size of Venezuela, it's a good chunk. The oil business is really what made the money for Venezuela. And it was, about double, maybe 2.5 times more than the drug trade. But still, you can't shake a stick at $8 billion a year. And with that came relationships, the nefarious actors behind the drug trade. A lot of power there, a lot of corruption. a lot of means to get things done. Now, the other episode I want to draw your attention to is episode 100 right here with my guest, Kervin Oakman. Now, Kervin Oakman is a 20-year Intel veteran, and he still, to this day, works in intelligence. Now, a lot of times when we talk, he can't tell me everything because there's ongoing operations, investigations, etc. But I will say, without confirming or denying, we usually are able to bounce some stuff off of each other. Of course, he's much more informed than I am. But in the end, this particular episode 100, we did a very good deep dive and assessment on the implications of attacking Venezuela, on the implications of possibly capturing Maduro. Like, we were talking about all of this well over a month ago. And just now, everyone's coming around to it. So, without me getting too deep, going into too much detail, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. Look, listen to episode 100 and listen to episode 102. Those two episodes that I did, there's chapters on YouTube. If you just want to skip to where you want to get to, if you want to listen to all the other bullshit, fine, great, good on you. I appreciate it. But those two episodes that I already put out previously will give you a lot of information that you have been missing when it comes to the whole Venezuela situation. Now, this is where I have to quote Andrews from Alien 3. This is rumor control. Here are the facts. Venezuela wasn't really about the drugs. I gotta be honest with you. The drugs were a major play. The drugs were a way to get people to buy in. Now, was it important to stop the illicit drug trafficking routes, the drug trade? Absolutely. Why? Because, again, it came down to the relationships those involved. The government of Colombia. Colombia, look, is also a narco state. Colombia was involved. Peru was involved. Panama involved. Mexico involved. Now, not necessarily the nation states themselves, but every one of these countries have very powerful narco-terrorist organizations, or cartels, if you'd rather call them that. All roads led to Venezuela. The other thing that was very important about Venezuela, since we're talking facts, is China. That's right. A lot of people dismissed China. A lot of people didn't talk about China. China was really part of the major reasons that Trump even acted. The reality is this. The whole thing with the drug trade, as I said previously, it goes back a long ways. You know, Obama ramped it up. He's the one who really, really put his eye on Venezuela. And he's the one who actually declared Venezuela a threat to national security, the American national security, that is. And he saw this. And whether you like Obama or not, this is how far it went back, period. Even under Biden, for as much of a, well, all right, I'm going to hold my tongue. For as much as some don't like Biden, I will just say that he also recognized the threat in what was going on with Venezuela. And when it came to Maduro specifically, Maduro's bounty on his head for crimes when it came to drug trafficking, human rights violations, etc., wasn't just about the United States of America. There are many countries who wanted Maduro captured. But the U.S., being the bigger country, the superpower in all of this, is the one who really, really had the means to make it happen. So the bounty on Maduro goes back quite a few years, and it started at 15 million. The Biden administration increased that to 25 million. And then it was later increased to 50 million. So again, I said this in another episode, or a previous episode. I believe it was episode 102. Was this about drugs? Yes and no, partially. Yes, it's a huge feather in the cap of the United States to squash that industry, to further put pressure on the drug trade in the area, to further put more stumbling blocks, roadblocks. Like, look, we're not going to be naive. We're not going to be able to shut it down entirely, even though we would love to. But so much came out of Venezuela. Many people claim that Venezuela didn't even produce anything, which was also a lie. Look, most of the drugs came from, again, it came from Peru and Colombia and Mexico. All went into Venezuela. 250 metric tons of cocaine alone, just cocaine alone, was trafficked through Venezuela. Just cocaine. And that made up literally 10, I think up to 15% of the entire cocaine trade in the world. Think about that. Think about that. And just specifically talking cocaine, by the way, this isn't all drugs that were funneled through Venezuela, just cocaine. I want to say it was about 10 to 13% of that was destined to the United States, the rest to Europe and Asia. So, was it about drugs? Was there a problem? Damn right there was. There was a huge problem. And again, it was more than just the drugs. It was the connections, it was the power, it was the means to get things done by other very dangerous individuals and organizations. And all these organizations were protected by the Venezuelan government. So what did Venezuela get out of it? Again, connections. Connections. They can call in a favor. They got money, absolutely got money. Again, about 8, maybe $9 billion a year out of it. Still a good revenue stream. But let's get past the drugs. Let's get back to China. So what was China doing there? Before the operation happened, I believe it was like literally the day before, China was there with delegates meeting with Maduro. Before the strike on Caracas, that involved very elite United States military personnel. I mean, we're talking about an air mission by the Army's 160th, also known as the Night Stalkers. I mean, these guys are elite helicopter pilots. They train to do nothing but fly at night at extremely low altitudes. I mean, these guys are the badasses of helicopter pilots, period. I mean, they are the special forces of helicopter operations, period. And then the other people that were tapped to go after Maduro, look, as badass as the Navy SEALs are, they called in Delta Force. And they're also known as special operations in the Army. And if you don't know who Delta Force is, well, that's by design. Their name isn't really pushed around that much. The military community absolutely knows about them, but these are the elite of the elite of the elite. Like this is the team that pulls from all the other special forces teams. Like you got SEALs, which much respect because damn, they do shit that I mean I would tap out. And then you got Delta Force. I mean, it just goes from here to here, like here to here to here, here, here. Trying to keep my hand in the frame here. But listen, y'all get the point. These are bad hombres. These are people that you do not fuck with. And if these guys are going after you, it's job done. Let me just say that. This operation was so well planned, so strategic, that the entire operation, from air support, taking out any kind of retaliatory means by the Venezuelan military, all the way to the 160th or Night Stalkers, bringing in the Delta Force Special Operations Unit, like capturing him, and then even taking him back and putting him on the boat was all less than 3 hours. All of it was less than 3 hours. All of it. And Delta Force, they trained. They had a full-scale model of Maduro's complex where they trained day and night to know every turn, every nook and cranny. Like the CIA was out there doing intel for months, doing nothing but tracking his movements, how he ate, by the way, even the times he ate, when he went to bed, his every single habit, so that there were absolutely no surprises. So this was absolutely not just a display of the most elite military in the world in operation, taking action, but a clear message to China, Iran, and Russia. China's involvement in the region is not just to do with Venezuela. But again, I know I digressed a bit. But China was there literally the day before having a meeting with Maduro. China had warned the US previous to this a few months ago to leave Venezuela alone. Well, why? Why is that? Well, China was making major investments in Venezuela in cash, mostly by loans. They were also selling military armaments to Venezuela. They were also training Venezuelan troops. So this goes well beyond just diplomatic relationships here. This was China digging in their heels and offering much more than needed. Why? For the same reason everybody is blaming Trump for going into Venezuela: the oil, the resources, and not just that, the hemispherical position to the United States. Having having a strategic base of operations, an ally in the Western Hemisphere, which is literally right here in the United States backyard, is huge. And before Venezuela, China was making many investments and growing the relationship with Peru. They were also doing the same in Panama. In fact, they help Panama build infrastructure. They control the port, by the way, the Panama Canal at both ends. Now, I know not the Chinese government directly, but two Chinese companies. So, I mean, we all know what that means. Look, in China, if you get into business, China is your partner. The actual government of China is one of the partners of that business, regardless. And when they want to, when they want to, they're going to punch your ticket and they're going to use your company for the betterment of their government, as they see anyway, as they see. So China was intentionally going around trying to create these relationships, giving all these countries loans, building their infrastructure, selling weapons and arms to Venezuela, training Venezuelan troops. They were digging themselves in to become the major power that controlled the Western Hemisphere, our own backyard. You know who else was doing this? Iran. That's right. Iran had a relationship with Venezuela as well. They would offer to go help repair their oil refineries. And you know what else Iran did? They sold advanced weaponry as well. Well, more like technologies. They would sell them drones and surface to air missiles. And they were also involved in military trainings and operations as well. So we got China and Iran in our backyard trying to get cozy with our neighbors. I mean, it's like you looking out your door and then let's just say the neighbor behind you is like, I don't know, for let's say your house is America and you look in the backyard and then that's Russia. Like that house is Russia, or in this case China or Iran. And when you look at the world, you look at the map, and even though it's a big world, that's literally what this was. This is what was going on. Russia was also involved. Russia had many investments in the area as well. Russia was involved in trading certain goods, certain services, or consulting and whatnot. Anyway, Russia was also involved. So Russia and Iran, they traded for oil. China, I will be honest, I'm not sure how much oil actually went to China, but China was there for other reasons. China wanted to control the Western Hemisphere. China wants to be the United States. They want to be the world power. China wants to solidify their Belt and Road Initiative. Now, they can already do that with Panama, but if you cozy up to Venezuela and Peru, well, that is three nations right next to each other. And if you can get that whole region right there under your control, under your grasp, then you pretty much own the hemisphere right there. You own that Western Hemisphere. So, again, was this about drugs? Partly. Was this about oil? Well, here's the thing with the oil. Yes and no. The thing with the oil is this: Iran was relying on the oil. They were using that oil regardless. But the bigger thing was Russia's use of the oil. So In controlling the oil there, stepping and controlling the oil, you're cutting off major energy, major supply of energy to these nations, as well as revenue streams to these nations. Secondly, the oil industry in Venezuela goes back a long way. And a lot of it had to do with America stepping in, helping develop the oil industry for Venezuela. Companies like Chevron, for example, they specialized in making refineries that could process their certain brand or type of oil because it's not it's not like the fine wine of oil. It needs a little work. It needs a little, you need to massage it a bit. You need to do a few more things to get it to be the oil that we need to use. But Venezuela is abundant in it. And so US oil manufacturers created the refineries, built the refineries to be able to process this particular type of oil. And just like in 2005, when Venezuela refused to work with the US government or with the DEA to try to get a handle on the illegal drug trade and the trafficking, Venezuela also, this wasn't in 2005, I'm not sure the exact date, but Venezuela also closed out and turned their back to the US in the oil trade. With that being said, Trump made some remarks here. Trump absolutely made some remarks. He said, we're taking the oil back. He said that we are also going to run Venezuela. Well, the choice words for sure. I understand controlling the oil, but Trump also did say that the revenues from the oil, he's going to make sure go back to Venezuela, go back to the people of Venezuela. So this isn't the intention of the Trump administration to just rob, pillage, and rape Venezuela. He's looking at a partnership with Venezuela. So I'm not really too concerned on how the US is going to be working with Venezuela in terms of the oil. Because Venezuela, their oil industry was not huge. They have so much reserve, but they didn't have the capability or capacity to get it out of the ground and refine it in the levels that they needed to be extremely profitable and rich. Were they rich in resources? Yes. Were their exports making them rich? No, because they had limited means of production. So the US stepping in is a good thing for Venezuela. I personally hope that Trump does what he says and that he truly is going to work with the nation state of Venezuela and the Venezuelan people to make sure that they're a once again wealthy, healthy nation. And look, I do not want to see Trump rape Venezuela whatsoever. I really don't. And I'm hoping that is not his intention. Time will tell. What I'm more concerned with is Trump's statement in saying that we are going to run Venezuela for a while until we can find a the appropriate transitionary time or period. So what that means is there's a lot that can happen here. Okay, so vice president of Venezuela was voted in or was sworn in to become president. But Trump swooped in and said, nah, we're not recognizing that. We're pumping the brakes. And I get it. I get it. When it comes to a democracy, for example, if the people voted, if the people want a certain individual, that it's that country's right to get behind that individual to be the de facto leader or representative of that country. But again, this is bigger than drugs. This is bigger than just Venezuela. This is about keeping control of the Western Hemisphere, keeping it safe. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by continuing to root out communism and the socialist practices within our own hemisphere. And by doing so, that is keeping Russia and China at bay and absolutely keeping Iran out of the picture. So controlling the area, I understand. Now, do we have to agree with this whole situation and how it was handled? No, we absolutely do not. Do we have to say that Trump is right in his assessment and his actions? We don't have to. But the unfortunate truth here, and you could take your emotions and just throw them out the window because, as I said earlier, This is rumor control. These are the facts. The reality of the situation is it was necessary. For too many years under previous administrations, going back many, many years, the encroachment of China in our own Western hemisphere over the years was unchecked. And it has gotten to the point that China was ramping up, was ramping up their plans, was not hiding it anymore. It was making it very known that they were going to control the region. We can't wake up to seeing China in our backyard with turrets of rockets, missiles, etc., pointed our way. We can't have China in our backyard controlling the oceans and the trade routes going through South America. That is not going to happen. So while we don't agree with it, we don't like regime change, and we don't want to see Trump take these actions, it had to happen because it went unchecked for too long. And if something didn't happen now, we would have woke up one day in a major war with China. We would have woke up one day with Iran right there outside our ports. And you may think that I'm wrong here, but my track record has been pretty right. So I think we just averted a major crisis by stepping in, taking care of the situation, and sending a very, very clear message to China, Russia, and Iran. And that message is this is our backyard. We say what happens here. And you need to get the fuck out. And so, look, I've been talking a while. What I want to do is I want to play a clip. This is from First Post. Now, they give a nice, unbiased reporting of what was going on there recently and, the whole situation. And so I want to play this. And it's a 4-minute clip. Okay. I don't know how long I'm going to go with it, but I have to play this clip because I thought it was a very well put together clip. And what really seemed to be like an unbiased report. Real news. Not like what I'm doing, apparently. But real news. Like just telling it like it is. Just saying this happened, that happened. This person said this. And so here's the clip I want to play for you. I'm going to go ahead and full screen that out so you can see it. And give this a listen.
A major diplomatic storm has erupted at the United Nations. China has strongly condemned the United States for seizing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and flying him to New York to face criminal charges. Beijing called the move illegal, bullying and a direct attack on Venezuela's sovereignty, warning it could set a dangerous global precedent. At an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, China said it was shocked by what it described as a unilateral use of force, adding that the United States had ignored international law and disregarded sovereign equality. Beijing demanded the immediate release of Maduro and his wife and called on Washington to resolve disputes through dialogue and not force.
The U.S. has placed its own power above multilateralism and military action above diplomatic efforts, posing a grave threat to peace and security in Latin America and the Caribbean, and indeed internationally. China firmly opposes this, and the international community has also expressed widespread grave concern and strong condemnation.
The dramatic developments followed a late-night raid in Caracas on Saturday, where Maduro and his wife were detained and transported to the United States. Maduro is now facing charges including narco-terrorism and weapons-related offenses.
All right, I'm going to pause this and interject here. So, remember how I discussed earlier that everybody is suddenly talking about China and the China involvement? When this happened, I posted on my social medias right away. I was like, look, I'm sitting here waiting for the China response. And everyone was like, huh? What the hell are you talking about? This isn't about China. It's about oil. All right, it took a couple of days. And then all of a sudden, Xi Jinping was everywhere with his statement. Everyone was like, oh, China said this and condemns the U.S. Here's what's rich about China's statement. These are the same people that in the Indo-Pacific region terrorized the Philippines, the Filipino fishing boats and whatnot. So they terrorized that area. They terrorized South Korea, not as much as North Korea does, but they give Japan a hard time. And they absolutely give Taiwan a hard time. So they're out there antagonizing Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan and the Philippines daily. All sovereign nations, by the way. But yet it's okay for China to do that. And if we're talking about violations, I mean, are we even talking about China's consistent and insistent genocide of the Uyghurs, the native Muslim Uyghurs in China? I mean, they're literally like capturing these people and chemically castrating them so that they can't breed and they can't continue their race. So it's very rich for China to speak up against the US's actions here. But again, why is China concerned? Because of everything I said. China was investing heavily into the area. China was making inroads with Venezuela. China was giving money to Peru and developing Peru. They were very heavily involved in Panama. This whole thing that Trump decided to do just disrupted China's plans. It dealt a major blow to China's plans to control the area in our backyard. All right, I'm going to continue this report.
Accusations he has strongly denied. He has pleaded not guilty in a New York court. Now, Washington has defended its actions, saying this was a law enforcement operation based on long-standing indictments. In fact, President Donald Trump had referenced the Monroe Doctrine to justify the operation, a principle that has shaped U.S. policy in Latin America for nearly 2 centuries. First articulated by President James Monroe in the 1800s, the doctrine was originally designed to warn European powers against intervening in the Western Hemisphere.
All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen.
I'm pausing here because it's important. Now, look, whether you like Donald Trump or not, like sometimes it sounds like he's just fumbling around and making stuff up on the fly. And many times he is. You know, he's never been a person to stay on script. But what he said is very important. And what was reported earlier before they cut to this clip is true. Now, we need to understand what the Monroe Doctrine. Sorry for that flub. Let me say that again. What the Monroe Doctrine represents. Listen, this was created at a time when America was sending a message to Europe and saying, look, you have no right to be in our hemisphere, and we're going to stand up to European colonialism in our backyard. But more importantly, what the Monroe Doctrine did is it established the Western Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere that was to be controlled and ran by the United States of America. Look, the U.S. has been a superpower for a very long time. The United States of America is the big dog. And I'm not just saying that because I'm American and I'm born here. It's just a fact. And before America, the big dog was, well, the UK. It was Britain. I mean, we cannot argue Britain's history and its power, its control, its prowess, what it contributed to the world. And so before America, it was Britain. But for a very long time, to this day, it is the United States of America. And the Monroe Doctrine established the ability for America to say what happens in the Western Hemisphere, and that nobody has a right to control, manipulate, or get involved in our hemisphere without our permission, without our say, and that we will not allow anybody to do what we don't give permission to do. Now, that is a very slippery slope because you can take that many ways. You could take that as, well, that's America just being authoritarian within the Western Hemisphere and basically even telling other sovereign nations, like, no, you answer to us. It's almost like, yeah, we're the boss. You kick up to us. And if you want to do something, we'll have a meeting and we'll decide whether or not you can look out for your nation and move forward and progress, et cetera. But the U.S. has never done that. They've never really came out and really did that. What the U.S. has done, though, has been vigilant, has been cautious, and they have kept watch. At some point, though, in history, we lost our way in establishing our presence and prowess in the Western Hemisphere and taking action in the Western Hemisphere. I think a lot of that happened after the Cold War. We kind of just got away from it because the big threat was Russia, and all of a sudden, the USSR at that time. And then it was suddenly like, well, it's over now. Everything's good. They were the threat. Like, we weren't even considering China necessarily back then. But, things have shifted. Russia, the current USSR, well, it's not USSR, but Russia today, still an absolute superpower. Still an issue. But nothing compared to China and their capabilities right now. And so China has been taking over where Russia left off. And they've been doing it differently. They've been trying to take a diplomatic approach to controlling the area. But Donald Trump just said, fuck that. Let me put my foot down and show you who we are, just because it seemed like you forgot a little bit. And basically just squashed all that. So now China's trying to figure out, well, how are we going to approach this? What are we going to do? Because China knows right now that Trump is serious. If they come in and they try to press any harder, there will be a war. There will be a war. And I'm not sure China wants that. And I'll be honest, I don't think the United States wants that either. I mean, we don't want two big, giant superpowers going at it. It's not good for either of the countries in discussion right now. And it's also not good for the world whatsoever. So anyway, that is what was important about the Monroe Doctrine. It wasn't just, we have the right to control Latin America. No. That's not what it was about. What it was about was establishing the Western Hemisphere and letting the world know, like, this is our backyard. What we say goes down here, and don't even try to fuck around or you will find out. And the Monroe Doctrine is back. And Trump is the president, surprisingly, that recognized this, stepped up, and made the statement that needed to be made well before the Trump administration, by the way. I mean, this should have been done a long time ago. All right, let me get back to this video clip.
Now, the United States insisted there was no war against Venezuela and no occupation, only a move to protect its citizens from narco-terrorism. Meanwhile, Russia sided with China, accusing the United Nations of international banditry and saying there could be no justification for the operation in Caracas. The United Nations has voiced serious concern, warning that the raid could worsen instability in Venezuela and create a troubling example of how states deal with each other. Now, Colombia, which requested the emergency meeting with support from China and Russia, urged all sides to focus on the well-being of the Venezuelan people, warning that civilians often pay the highest price in such crises.
Isn't it interesting that the people who spoke up against what the U.S. did in Venezuela are China and Russia and Colombia, a narco state, and two authoritarian nations built on the backbone of communism. I mean, you just can't make this shit up. All right, let's continue this.
China has deep economic and strategic ties with Venezuela. Analysts say China may not offer direct material support, but its diplomatic weight could shape international opinion against Washington.
Cooperation between China and Venezuela is collaboration between sovereign states. It is protected by international law and the respective national legislation of both countries. Regardless of political developments in Venezuela, China's commitment to deepening practical cooperation across various fields remains unchanged, and China's legitimate interests in Venezuela shall be safeguarded in accordance with the law.
So what are those interests there, China? What are you trying to safeguard? Your interests are resources, are oil. They're a strategic position in the Western Hemisphere. That's what it is. That's what you're not saying. And a great choice of words there earlier, right? This is this is about a relationship between two sovereign nations. Huh, you're right. You and Venezuela are, China and Venezuela are sovereign nations. But the reason you're there is nefarious. The reason you're there is to antagonize and disrupt United States power in relationship within our own backyard. That is all there is to it. And the fact that you were there negotiating was for what? For the oil. Don't act like you weren't looking at the oil, looking at the gold, all the resources that you can rape and pillage from that land, just like you have done in Africa. See, the Chinese are really snakes. They really are. Um, they're trying to look diplomatic, professional, trying to cite United Nations laws, while at the same time doing everything against what they are chastising the U.S. for. The U.S. went in strategically, took care of a situation. Maduro's alive. He wasn't killed. He's in custody. Sorry. He is on trial. And, you know, China would have done it a lot differently. The difference here is the United States is not trying to take over, rule, and absorb Venezuela. China was trying to do that through money and through, big air quotes here, people, diplomatic relations. So while China may be opposed, don't be fooled. China was there for the resources. China was there for the strategic position. And China, like in this report earlier, said, well, while China doesn't offer any materials or material goods or whatever, that's a complete lie. Well, okay, maybe not a lie. The reporter probably didn't even know that China absolutely sells arms on armaments to the Venezuelan government for the military, and China trains the Venezuelan military. Why would China be training the Venezuelan military? To help protect China's interests in the region against you know who, the United States of America. Period. All right, let me go ahead and keep playing this video a little bit more.
Well, for nearly 2 decades, China and Venezuela have built a unique oil-backed financial partnership. Through
Just like I
loans
said.
for oil arrangements, Beijing extended billions of dollars in credit to Caracas. This episode exemplifies the dynamics of great power competition on the global stage. For many, the seizure of Maduro without multilateral authorization reinforces long-standing claims that international law is applied selectively. How this moment is absorbed by global institutions will signal whether multilateralism can still restrain power.
All right, so they do have a point there. This does set the precedent for other nations, right? It's like, well, if the United States can just step in and snatch Maduro to take care of this situation, then what's stopping China or Russia? It's like, how can we talk about what's going on in the Ukraine while, on the other hand, you know, the U.S. is invading another sovereign nation and just like snatching their president? Well, it's not quite the same thing, because Russia, if you're talking about Russia and Putin's legacy is reuniting the old USSR. Like when it was broken up a few times. Putin has made it very clear many times that he wants to reunite the great old USSR. His interests in Ukraine aren't necessarily just for resources or to take out a corrupt leader. No, he wants to take over the entire area and make it part of Russia by and in doing so, increasing Russia's landmass and territory. And of course, Russia has their eye on Poland. Russia has its eye on Belarus. Russia has its eye on, Russia wants the entire region, period. And so take what Russia says or what Putin says with a grain of salt. Take what China says with a grain of salt. Iran has no leg to stand on. The reality is they're pissed that we disrupted their plans again to gain a strategic position in the Western Hemisphere where they can have a bit of control and power to stand up against the United States of America. That is exactly what this whole situation was about. Now, with that being said, how does Venezuela feel about all this? You know what's funny is after this happened, all the protesters out there, like let me do a little thing here, a little history here. So remember Ukraine, all the protesters that were protesting on behalf of Ukraine, like, we got to save Ukraine, send Ukraine all the money. Let's do everything we can to save Ukraine from the big bad Russian oligarchy. And then Palestine happened. And then suddenly everybody forgot about Ukraine. Then it was like, save Palestine, free Palestine, 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 Palestine. Excuse me. And so now everyone forgot about Palestine. Now it's free Venezuela. What are we doing? How we shouldn't be stepping into a sovereign nation. Let Maduro go. Now you have all these protesters protesting on behalf of Maduro. And it's like, it's the next thing, right? It's the next thing to get behind. It's like, it's the trend. You know what's crazy about all these protesters is most of them are actually paid protesters. You know, there's a company, I should know this. You know, I brought it up. I'll bring it up on next episode. Well, hopefully I remember to. But anyway, there's a company specifically, there's more than one, but there's a company out there that all they do is they provide protesters. Like, you pay them and they will provide protesters to go out and protest on the issues on your behalf. Like, literally. Like, and so a lot of what you're seeing is fake. It's like, it's opposition for opposition's sake. It's just like whatever is against what the Trump administration is doing, or more to the point, whatever the American government is doing is what they are protesting. It's not about America. It's not about American interests. It's not about, you know, what's good for the rest of the world. It's really just opposition to the American government. And so all these protesters are out there and they're protesting what happened in Venezuela. I got a video that's really, really cool here. So this guy, let me go and switch over here. This guy here, let me blow this up. He went out and he actually started questioning these people. And this isn't Switzerland. Like, this is a worldwide thing. This isn't just the United States. This is everywhere. People are protesting what the United States did. So this guy is like questioning everybody. He's like, are you even Venezuelan? Are you from Venezuela? Like, do you even know what you're protesting for? Check this clip out.
¿Tú eres venezolano?
No, pero soy latinoamericano.
¿No eres venezolano?
No.
¿Un venezolano por ahí?
Allá, la que habló.
Llámalo porque hay un venezolano aquí.
Allá está.
Hay un venezolano por aquí. Hay un venezolano por aquí. Yo quiero.
If you guys don't understand what he's saying, he's basically asking everybody, is anyone here Venezuelan? Like, are you Venezuelan? Anybody here? And so far, everyone is not answering. They're like saying, no, maybe this guy over here. So that's what's happening around. He's like, are you Venezuelan? Is anybody here Venezuelan? All right, continue playing this.
Quiero hablar con un venezolano por aquí.
You just said, I want to talk to a Venezuelan around
¿Tú eres
here.
venezolano? ¿Ah? ¿De qué parte de Venezuela? ¿De Carabobo? ¿Qué parte de Carabobo? No eres venezolano. Hay un venezolano aquí. Porque tiene la bandera de Venezuela y están apoyando al chavismo, pero no hay un venezolano aquí.
So he just said, you know, you got everybody out here with these Venezuelan flags, and he just pointed out one guy saying, you know, you guys are supporting the chavismo, and not one of these people is from Venezuela. Not one of them. Not a single one. So you got a lot of this going on where people are just calling out all the fake bullshit. And here's a few more clips. Now this is from Uriel Cohen, and I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, but this guy's here on X, and what he did is he put a thread together of people from Venezuela who made social media posts to explain how they feel about the situation. And I'm just going to scroll and run through some of these just so you guys get an idea of what's going on. All right, let's start with the first one here.
If you are not from Venezuela, you better shut the fuck up. I've seen a lot of videos of gringos trying to explain Venezuela to Venezuelans. You don't even know the difference between Venezuela and Mexico. You can't even point Venezuela in a fucking map. You don't know what is to live in starvation. You never saw a family member dying because you didn't have the medication, while the members of the Chavismo are walking with Rolex in their hands. Do you want to know how many people died trying to come to America, going through a jungle? Do you want to know how many women were raped there? We are 8 millions of Venezuelans who have left Venezuela. You don't know what is to live like that. You are too freaking busy eating your Starbucks with almond milk, you motherfucker. I have a question for you guys. Where were you when they were killing us? Where were you when they were killing students? Students who didn't have any weapon. You were too freaking busy drinking your Starbucks with oat milk. So you better shut the fuck up and take Venezuela out of your filthy mouth.
Okay. Here's another one.
Hi, my name is Paula, and I am Venezuelan, born and raised. I've lived in the United States for almost 10 years to the date, and I am an American citizen also, by the way. The main reason why I'm coming here today, I'm literally nobody, and if this reaches one person, my job here, that one person that didn't know what was happening in Venezuela, and now they do, my work here is done. I am outraged about the comments I've been seeing today. I made the mistake myself of going on social media and reading all the news outlets reporting on the news of the Venezuelan strikes, well, military strikes to remove Maduro, thank you. And everybody, a ton of Americans, and then from whatever you're from, but you've never been to Venezuela, you have no idea about the political situation in Venezuela, the history of Venezuela, and trying to be like our saviors. Like, I can't. Let me set some things straight. First of all, the regime has been going on since 1998 when Chavez was elected president. From there on, their country is the mess, in good words, that it is today. We have suffered a lot. The Senate was dissolved. The Constitution was changed. They bought the military, all the armed forces. Many people have been killed, kidnapped. You can go do the Google search yourself, or just ask, because clearly Google's not working for you people. 3 things I want to get across today. 1, Venezuelans are sad. No, we're not. This is literally the happiest day of our life. This is our second independence. We are still in shock, complete shock about what finally happened. We have been wanting this. We have been praying for this. We have been literally anybody that we have been able to go to and ask, and nobody listened to us. So we are happy. Enjoy. And even if you're a Venezuelan in Venezuela or a Venezuelan outside of Venezuela, in any country that you are, if you left 10, 15 years ago, 5 days ago, or a week ago, we are all happy. So don't worry about us. We're happy. The United States only attacking Venezuela because of the oil. People, we do not control our oil. We haven't seen our oil. Russia, Iran, Cuba, China.
Sorry, I had to pause it because it's exactly what I've been telling everybody, man. I'm not even from Venezuela, but I could read the tea leaves and read through the bullshit and the headlines and go deeper. And I mean, here's someone from Venezuela just telling you how it is, like, firsthand. All right, I'm gonna keep playing her.
Whatever other countries, Central America and South America, we've been giving away our oil to all these countries. Like, we're not seeing that. Anyways, so, and we used to have trades and whatever other things with the United States before Chavez about our oil, and our country was working fine. So the way we don't care, don't worry about us. If the United States wants to take our oil, we will be happy to be giving away the oil to the United States if that means that our country is going to be safe, and that us citizens, residents of whatever of Venezuela are going to be good, are going to be able to make money, are going to be able to retire, which none of those things are happening right now. And then number 3, if you're worried about what United States did to Venezuela and like what's going to happen now, nothing, literally, and I mean this, nothing can be worse than the hell we've lived up until now. So stop, and I mean this, stop trying to explain Venezuela to Venezuelans. Stop. If you want to know, reach out to someone from Venezuela, okay?
Right? Good point. Here's another clip from another Venezuelan right here.
I'm Venezuelan, and let me tell you something. This is the happiest day of my life. They have massacred us, intimidated us, humiliated us. And today we finally recover hope. It's been 25 years of dictatorship. How can you defend that? They have forced more than 8 million Venezuelans to flee the country, including me. And I'm not going to let anyone to tell me that this is not good for us. This is the best thing that could happen to Venezuela. This is what all Venezuelans want.
All right, here's another guy right here.
This is a video for all those liberals and leftists, mostly American, that I've seen in the media, complaining about what's going on in Venezuela, complaining about these military attacks against military buildings, against government buildings that were attacked today in the early morning. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, we have had 27 years of dictatorship in our country that has censored us, that has tortured us, that has killed us, and that made us go away from our country. Like, they made us run away from our own homeland. Do you ever imagine that you will have to do that? Like, do you even put yourself in the situation of what does that mean? I'm pretty sure you don't, because you still live here, even though you complain about everything about this country. You still choose to stay here. So why don't you go to Venezuela? Why don't you go to Cuba? Why don't you go to Nicaragua? Why don't you go to any of these countries that pretty much share the views you have? The political views you have. So also, I'm doing this message in English because unfortunately American liberals are the ones talking about how bad this is and how the US wants to steal our oil, wants to steal our natural resources. Do you know that Russia, that Cuba, that Nicaragua, that all these communist countries, pieces of shit, have been stealing all that from my country already? Did you even know that? Like, why do you care what happens with our natural resources now? Why do you care about what happens in our land now? When not too long ago, people were being killed on the streets for protesting against the regime. While nowadays, we have a center of torture in the capital of our country with thousands of political prisoners. So I ask you this: why do you feel that you are in the right to defend a dictator?
Fair enough. Look, I'm gonna scroll a little bit so you can see if you're on X. This guy has a lot of videos in this thread from various peoples. And so these are all people from Venezuela. These are all videos from Venezuelans. And it's definitely something you should check out and get a better grasp on what's happening out there. And look, I'm sure there are people out there that can argue, well, those were all just propagandist videos. Look, we're gonna get it all. It's really on you to read between the lines and filter through the bullshit. And someone like me, listen, if you listen to the show consistently, you already know that's what I do. I go deeper. I dive beyond the headline. But I don't expect for you to take everything I say as face value, for example. I mean, look, you could even challenge me. Please do. And look, and if you find something like, legitimately find something like real information that really like corrects or conflicts what I'm saying, then let me know. But make sure it's legitimate information. I'm always open to knowledge and knowing what's going on out there. But everything I presented to you is true. And again, as I said in the beginning of this episode, this is rumor control. These are the facts. And to be honest, there is so much more I can go over. I just didn't want to get into the weeds too much because I didn't want to bore everybody out there. But I think you got enough information in this episode alone to give you a better idea of why we got involved, what the whole Venezuelan operation was about, and how Venezuelans feel about what happened. The only thing I have to say is I hope Trump absolutely says what he, does what he says, and that he says what he means. I hope that he helps make Venezuela rich. I hope that he actually does get the money back to the Venezuelans. And I hope that he does carefully and strategically work with the Venezuelans to get a democratic government that is not built on the backbone of communism or socialism. Socialism doesn't work. Socialism destroyed that country. And with socialism always comes corruption. It always sounds good on the surface, but it started with Hugo Chavez. You know, as it was stated earlier by one of these people in the video clips I just played, back all the way back to 93, 98, somewhere in there, in that 5-year period, all of a sudden the Constitution was rewritten, everything was thrown out the window, and it just became a dictatorship. Same thing happened under Maduro. And while on the surface it looked like they had elections, Maduro himself literally like ran a rigged election. Like in the 11th hour, suddenly there was like all these votes to side with Maduro, so it looked like he was overwhelmingly the winner when in fact he wasn't. And to this day, I forgot the number of countries, but I mean, the majority of countries in the world right now don't even recognize Maduro as a legitimate president. He's a thug. He's a gangster, period. He's an opportunist. He's using a nation to basically fund his lifestyle and to gain connections and to and further his power, not just within the Caribbean, but throughout the world. So with all of that, look, I'm going to end it here. I think we went long enough. I appreciate all of you. Listen, Happy New Year. Have an amazing 2026. And please, look, as we move forward in 2026, if 2025 proved anything, is that people became much more savvy as to, you know, legacy media, even social media. Like people are now starting to question and challenge the headlines. They're being able to better spot the bullshitters out there. And please continue to do so. Fact check everybody. Don't take anything for face value. And look, we'll all meet back in the middle somewhere. Appreciate your support, everybody. By the way, like, share, subscribe to the show. Literally tell other people about World Blaze. That's one thing I'm doing in 2026. We're going to push the show harder. We want to grow the show even more. Look, I'm going into my 3rd year. I'm still a young show, but man, has it been a ride for sure. The support I have gotten has been amazing. I've made some changes for this year, and we're going to continue to push. And please, again, like, share, and subscribe to the show. Thank you very much. Have a great 2026. Until the next episode, have a great day.
Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.